Hey, good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining me on this impromptu session. I just figured I had to because it was just so much of a data jump. So, for those joining me live right now, thank you very much. I appreciate it. For those on the replay crew, I love you guys too. So, a lot of things happening today with these affidavits. Now, I have both of the affidavits. I read through them. There's one in particular that I want to focus in on, and that's the one with the what everyone likes to hear about, right? The swingers. But the reason why I want to talk about the swingers, because there is some information in this affidavit that could prove helpful once we find out about the search warrant. So if you've missed what happened today, I'm just going to go quickly through what transpired with the press conference. So it was a very long press conference. It was 45 minutes, I think, and it was pretty detailed. John Ray, the Gilbert family attorney for Shannon Gilbert family, and present with him, the police commissioner, held this press conference out in Miller Place, Long Island, is in Suffolk County. And the thing that really kind of struck me funny on this was, well, not so much funny, but really piqued my interest when this story first broke, was the fact that the police commissioner was there with the attorney John Ray. Now, if you guys recall, I had John Ray on my show about 9 days ago. So if you haven't seen that, you should watch that video too, because he alluded to a number of these things that he talked about today in that video. So I was kind of excited about that. Well, anyway, John Ray has held press conferences throughout the last 13 years or so since this Gilgo case became evident with the Shannon Gilbert case. And I always say that John Ray needs to be given credit, like him or not. And there's a lot of people that don't like him. That's fine. Everybody's up for their own opinion. But like him or not, you have to give him credit for keeping this case alive in the media, and also the fact that he's been the Gilbert family advocate for since this thing from the very beginning. And without Shannon Gilbert, we don't have this case. So he has to get credit for that. Like I said, like the guy or not, you have to give him that much of a credit. So I know, welcome everybody on Kick. Unfortunately, I won't be able to do all of the back and forth because I'm doing this solo show here today. So I appreciate anybody who's helping out. I know there's a couple of mods out there too. But so getting up to this affidavit. So if you guys haven't seen these affidavits, I could try to post them online if you haven't seen them. I'd be more than willing to, of course. Just ask me. But let's just talk about what an affidavit is, right? So an affidavit is an oath or affirmation that says, this is what I know to believe to be true. And you're making an official statement that if you get caught lying on that official statement, there could be criminal penalties. All right. And in the court, if it happens in a courtroom, we know that's perjury. So these are serious things. These affidavits are nothing to be taken lightly. Now, in the press conference, they didn't read them. And I'm not going to read them all to you either, because you're all big boys and girls and you can read on your own. But there are a couple of things in here that I want to go through just from the investigative standpoint that I think are really important to focus in on. So you guys are with me? All right, good. Okay, so the first thing is, like I said, this is the Swinger case. In the beginning of these, the first paragraph is just basically, I'm over 18, I'm a resident of blah, 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 and, everything I've said is coming here is true. And just remember that an affidavit has to be notarized or in court, or somebody who is a notary public, right? So John Ray is an attorney, so he automatically has that capability. So I'm just going to read you a couple of parts of here, and then we're going to discuss it. It says, I'm a former swinger. I am 54 years old. A swinger is a person who partners with another person, then the partnership has sex with other partners or groups or partners. I formed a partnership with an NYPD policeman in and around 1996. His name, I will just call him RW. So she gives the initials of this cop, who's probably a former cop right now. She also said that he was a police officer assigned to Prospect Park in Brooklyn. I believe that might be the 7-8 precinct. If anybody is on there who can tell me Prospect Park 7-8, I think that's where it is, the Brooklyn South. She said he became he was handsome, she loved him, and we became members of a swingers club known as Trapeze. Now, I'll just I Googled trapeze, so you don't have to. Right. So I don't want to see you guys Googling trapeze club and then your husbands or wives or boyfriends or girlfriends are looking through your Google searches and finding that you are looking up at this former bad boy and bad girl club. All right. So this club was located at 17 East 27th Street in Manhattan. Now, just for a point of reference, Rex's architectural firm was located at 19 West 36th Street, which is less than a 15-minute walk from his architecture firm to the trapeze. That's how close it was, right? So it's less than a 15-minute walk. So they believe there's many. Now this is what she's saying. There's about 300 people that go to this place at any given time. So I couldn't imagine what the debauchery was like in that joint. She says, I and RW went to the trapeze several times and engaged in sex with other couples there several times. She saw other people doing this also. And she also makes this allegation that several members were police officers. Several members were from Long Island, where members were enabled to post messages and contact information to call. Okay. Now, here's where some of the interesting parts come in. And this is where the moral and ethical compass on some of these things really are keyed off. She says either Rex Heuremann or his wife, Asa, this is her words now, not mine, posted contact information for them in a house in Massapequa Park to engage in swinger sex in 1996. I and RW chose to go there to the Heuremann home in February 1996. RW picked up a woman I believe to be Karen Vergata in New York City on the way to Heuermann's house. And here's her words. And I circled them because as I was reading this, she was hungry and homeless. She sat in the back of the car. She leaned forward and to the right. When we stopped for gas, she said that she was scared. I told her not to be scared because RW was a cop. She couldn't be safer than being with a cop. I told her to ask at the house when we arrived to take a shower for food. All right, so she's telling this young woman that you're going to take a shower and food when we get to the Heuremann house. Now, this is something else. She says, my partner, who I believe was bisexual, kept on disappearing. I believe he was elsewhere in the house having sex with Rex. I believe I had sex with Rex as well. All right. Either you do or you don't, right? So that's to me, that's one of the red flags there. Asa told me in words to the effect that Rex brought her from the country and that everything she had was given to her. She said that she was lucky that he was rich. Now, this is supposed to be the conversation between Rex and this woman, Asa and this woman. She said that she was also afraid of Rex. Now, let's take a step back here. I know a lot of people are jumping on the fact and saying, how does Asa not know this? And, why was she? And I had said if you saw me on STS, this the Survivor podcast with Joel Waldman this afternoon, I said she could very well be a victim of domestic violence, right? Remember, this is Domestic Violence Month, so we have to attribute, that this could also be the case here, and that she's a battered woman, and that she is psychologically and physically abused. Now, do I know this for sure? No, but you have to take that into consideration. We're talking about a really bad person here. So this is something that you have to take that into consideration. Now, if we find out later on down the road that she was of sound mind and she was, doing things that she shouldn't have been doing, I have no problem with having her arrested. But until we know more and until we decide on what culpability, if she has any, I think people need to just hold off on bashing this woman. Okay, that's just my personal opinion. You don't have to listen to me, of course, but that's just the way I think it goes. Now she makes a couple interesting things. She says that when she was at the house, there was a Christmas tree that was up. And she said the reason why she knew that it was around the holidays, she says, because she would swing on the holidays and Valentine's Day and Halloween. She counts as a holiday that she would do this. But she says, I also saw 2 large seashells on a shelf in the house. I recall thinking things like that were shells from the country where I grew up in, country's name known to Mr. Ray. I asked Asa if she had any friends from the country. I do not remember what she replied. Now, this is something that I starred and highlighted. And you say to yourself, Joe, why? And I think some of you are probably already thinking this same way. They executed a search warrant, and this just, didn't come out of thin air. I believe they had this information for quite a while, and I think that when they executed this search warrant, it's going to be interesting if they found these seashells and they took them as evidence. Because if they did, this corroborates much of her story about being at the house specifically around this time frame. And I think that would be a really good thing for their case. Now, remember, this is an allegation. Yes, it's a sworn affidavit, but there is zero evidence of any of this happening. The police do a job where they take information like this, they're building their case, and they present it to the district attorney. The district attorney, I believe, he's already, I think, very upset about this. He posted a thing out today, Ray Tierney, and he was not happy about the press conference today, just in case you didn't know that. But that's for another story. So the police now need to corroborate this. They need to develop this story, and one of those ways would be through that search warrant. So, so Kathy says club photos of swingers clubs are probably unlikely. Yeah, they probably are. Yeah. Now here, Vivs mentions a great question. Did they see any creepy dolls? Right? Like that, we know about the creepy doll that they took out of the house. That's a great question, and this statement makes no mention of that, Viv, but that's a really an excellent observation there. Yeah, the DA kind of poo-pooed this whole thing, but I think it might also be people, jockeying for position on this thing too. So when you're dealing with people up at that high level, there's all kinds of issues that you deal with. So we'll know more. Now, remember, Tuesday, I am going to have Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison on this channel. Right. So if you guys have questions that you want me to ask him, I'm going to try to. He said he's going to give me 45 minutes. And believe me, I'm going to use every one of those minutes, especially after today. We have a lot more to talk about. So you can just go to the link for that show and leave the comments, leave your questions in the comments over there. And I will try to see if I can get them answered because I'm lining up my own questions. I know Raul said he was going to take off from work tomorrow or whatever and try to get this thing done. So it's yeah, keep them coming. Please do it because this is going to be a big show for me. So now here's where the problem is. So she says this confirms that she asked Asa if she would perform sex on her, and she said no. There's no indication here about the race thing. I haven't seen it, so I know they did say that in the press conference. Now here's where the story gets takes a twist, right? So RW, remember, this is the boyfriend, wished to leave. I went with him to his car. We left from the back door. RW complained that he lost his belt. He went back to the house to retrieve it. I saw the face of the woman I believed to be Karen up against a window of the house. She looked scared. I had a sense that she was calling for help. I told RW this. The woman I believed to be Karen suddenly ran outside naked and ran about by the garage. She doesn't make a mention if she's screaming or not. RW had gone to the back of the house to look for his belt, but it was in the back of the car. RW told me not to worry about her, that she was okay, that they were playing a game. We left without her. I felt uneasy that we left without the woman. Now, there is a sign of that this individual is feeling guilty about this, and probably one of the reasons why she came forward and gave a signed affidavit. I can't tell you how many times when I was doing cold cases where you would knock on a door or you would talk to people to re-interview them, and they would say, I've been waiting for this for 20, 30 years. I thought this day was never come. So for those of you that are thinking, oh, people will just come forward. No, sometimes the police have to go out there and ask the right people the right questions in order to get what they need. So it's something that you just keep that in the back of your head. So she said, I saw Rex on TV recently and a picture of Karen Vergata. I recognize her as the woman who RW had brought to the home. Now the way she writes this, it sounds unequivocal that she saw the picture of Karen Vergata and said, that's Karen Vergata. Because she says, I recognized her as the woman who RW and I brought to Heuermann's house. So she's including herself in this, which is kind of interesting, right? Because she's kind of saying that, we were doing this together. We brought this woman and we put her in this position. She says, I was shocked and deeply sorrowful for having left her behind at Heuermann's house. I told John Ray of these things because I needed to speak with him so that Karen would not be left behind again, right? Which is actually a kind of nice way of ending it for her in the affidavit. So this one here, I believe this affidavit here is extremely important because it gives some details within the house that the police can corroborate with when they conducted their search warrant. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly what that happens. And it was signed. This one was signed on August 31st of 2023. So that's much after the search warrant. So it'll be interesting. But one of the things that the police do during these search warrants is they take photographs of all the rooms too. So even if they didn't have this information ahead of time, this is something that you can actually maybe count on, that they have photographs. And so here, hold on a second. This one here. So Andrea Cipriano, which we know she was on the show not too long ago. The person speaking in the affidavit says she loved RW, so we must have given more information on him. Yeah, the RW. So people probably, and nobody asked me, and Joel didn't ask me this today. Like, how do they find the police? It's pretty easy, right? So you have initials. You have where this guy worked. They just call the police department, the NYPD Internal Affairs Bureau, and they'll give you every cop that has the initials RW that worked in Prospect Park, Brooklyn. And then they'll probably do a search for every cop that has RW in their names in the entire department. So this is actually kind of easy. Now the question is he still alive? And if he is, this is a serious allegation. So yeah, Missy says they know who RW is. I agree. They already know him and they've interviewed him. And I believe, well, if he's still alive anyway, he's in a lot of trouble. This is a serious allegation that she makes on this. I don't know if she realizes that she implicates him in something extremely serious, because even as a police officer, you're not allowed to, what's the term that they use? Associate with known criminals. And even though she's not considered a criminal in many people's eyes, according to the law, she is. And the fact that he picked her up. Now, this is is anybody else in agreement with me that there is something missing from this story about how this cop gets Karen Vergata, picks her up like this? Yeah, I read someone on the comments was mentioning that this is like bizarre. And it's kind of like this big, huge hole in this affidavit. I would like to know more about how this cop gets a hold of Karen Vergata. What did he promise her? And why is he picking her up right out of basically jail or central booking, and bringing her all the way out to Long Island, right? So from New York City to Long Island. And listen, this is a serious allegation against this guy. And will we find out who? Yeah, I agree. Publicly buzzed. I don't know if this is Steve or Dan, but this is going to get a lot deeper. And I'm telling you, we're gonna end up going down this rabbit hole big time. And it's just something. So that was the first affidavit. If you have any questions or something I didn't cover on that, just let me know. But that is, this is something now. The second affidavit is kind of written in reverse chronological order. So I'm going to skip the first part and go to the second part, because that's how the chronology of it should be. So this one here also, a very believable affidavit. And the reason why both of them to me are believable, right? Because the first one actually implicates herself and implicates her boyfriend at the time. And this one here, this woman is a taxi cab driver. She's got no skin in the game. She's got absolutely nothing to do with anybody, anything. And she comes forward now too. And why? Because she saw the television shows with Rex and she, the news and saw the thing. This guy was a giant of a man. And, even if you saw the pictures of him and the police officers, he like towered over everybody. So he was a big dude. And somebody that you probably, if you met him, you wouldn't have forgotten it because he was just so big. Uh, it's just she describes him as a very large man throughout this affidavit. Now, the first, so like I said, I'm going to do this in reverse I'm going to do this in chronological order. So I'm going to skip the first part of her affidavit and go right to the second. So she writes about, it says, in another incident which preceded the one above, right? So this is why I'm telling you that it's in a different chronological order. So if you do get the affidavit and you read it, just turn to page 4, and at the very top, it talks about this incident preceded. So she gets a job to pick up somebody at the Sayville Motor Lodge, which on Sunrise Highway in Sayville, which I am unfamiliar with. It is apparently it was just closed down through, I think, nuisance abatement for prostitution and some other issues that were going on. So it had a checkered past and pretty much a history. So if you Google the Sayville Motor Lodge, you will find a lot of different complaints of prostitution and other things that was occurring on the premises there. So the issue that we're dealing with here, so she said she gets this call. I was told by my dispatcher that the prospective passenger had asked for a female driver. Right, so the phone call that came in, the woman on the phone wanted another woman driver. Now, just remember that because that, I think, comes into play in the second one. So this woman had locked herself in the bathroom in the motel. I drove in behind the motel. I saw a dark, apparently greenish gray SUV. Now, we know that Rex had a green and gray, not an SUV, but the Chevy Avalanche. Now, did she mistakenly call it an SUV? Because it was green and gray. If you remember, the truck was like this forest green, and then they had this clapboard. They called it a clapboard on the bottom that was gray. So that kind of like stuck out to me. I don't know if anybody else caught that or knew about that, but it kind of like, but she says it's an SUV, so it kind of like poo-poos that. But just the colors I thought were pretty wild that she pulled that out. She says, I drove into the parking lot to the left. I looked for the correct room number. When I located, I blew the car's horn and flashed the lights at the room. I did things. I did this on and off for 7 or 8 minutes. No one came out of the room. So I'm assuming it's the kind of hotel where you just drive up to the door and the window's right there. So it's like a long row of motels, probably just all one level kind of thing. She says, then a very large man came out. He appeared to have a bit of a belly. Well, welcome to the club. He ran to the side street. Right? She's making this one. He tried to block his face with his arms. Then a girl ran out. She was petite. She was crying and shaking. She entered my taxi in the right rear seat. She said that we had to get away from here. I noticed that one of her eyes had something defective about it, that it appeared to droop. Her hair was pulled back neatly like a ballerina would have done. She wore a jeans and a t-shirt. She was not dressed provocatively. She said that she was glad that she had gotten me as a driver. Now, for somebody who, let's put it this, so this is around 2009, around 2008, 2009. She remembers what she was wearing. She remembers the droopy eye. She remembers a lot of this. So, I mean, it's actually kind of interesting how well. So now I had started this paragraph number 10. So if you're following along, let's take a look at number 10. She says, the girl told me that she met the large man on Craigslist. Now, this is a red flag, and this is the reason why I started, because we know that Gilgo 4, the 4 girls, were picked up on the internet using Craigslist and Backpage. Now, Backpage has been shut down, but Backpage was a site where people would advertise their services, in this case, sex work, and then do the meetups. So this is where all those burner phones are now coming into play, the Craigslist websites and the Backpage websites. As a matter of fact, one of the initial serial killer names for this guy was the Craigslist killer. If you recall, if you've been following this case from the beginning since I had, they called him the Craigslist killer. So that's a kind of a red flag here. So we now have a connection between Craigslist, this guy who might be Rex Heuremann at the Sayville Motor Lodge, and Shannon Gilbert. All right, so that's big. So she said that she said to her that he would take care of her mom, her sisters, and her boyfriend, which is what she had. She had two other sisters and her mom, and she had a boyfriend. She said that he placed a thick white envelope on the nightstand in the room. She said that he told her that whatever happens tonight, this envelope was for her and her family. But she said that she saw a rage in his face. She said that when he went to the bathroom, she looked at the envelope. She said the envelope was filled with cut up paper. She said that she shook her and that he was aggravated. She said that hang on, got aggressive. So she ran into the bathroom and locked herself in there. She said he banged on the door. Now, he's a very big man, I doubt these doors would have held him back if he really went at it. But this is actually an interesting thing because one of the theories or one of the things that have been floating around, especially, and I've said this a number of times too, that the Gilgo Four, I believe two of the girls, he was able to convince them to leave their cell phones at home the night that they disappeared. Now, I don't imagine these street smart girls are going to leave their phones behind and meet a total stranger. So I'm assuming that he had met with these girls numerous times and made them feel comfortable enough that was going to that everything was just going to go. Then leave your phones back because we're going to spend the night and I'm going to pay you, X number of dollars more for the entire night. That's just my theory. I could be wrong. If you think I'm wrong or you have another theory, just let me know, and we can discuss that. So she said the girl never told her name. So this is an important aspect, right? So the girl never told her. I believe the incident took place when it was still warm outside. The girl wore a little light jacket, a dark color one. She had a pocketbook, which was not large. She said that they were always calling her to come out to Long Island. She said that she did not want to come out to Long Island. She told me about her family, including her sisters and her mother. She said that her mother, I would not be able to understand her situation with her mother. Much of the conversation took place at the Sayville Motor Lodge at the Ronkonkoma train station. She had a long wait in order to take her the 2 a.m. train to New York City. Well, this kind of sounds a lot like Shannon Gilbert because that's where she lived, and but this is something now that we have to find out on the timeline of Shannon Gilbert's life is when did she start working with Michael Pack? If you recall, Michael Pack was her driver that took her to Oak Beach the night that she disappeared. Michael Pack was also the driver who left her there and didn't really, he said he tried to calm her down and try to get her in, but she said she ran off. So this incident here might have been the incident that sparked her to get a driver and do, we don't know for sure. And this is just, of course, just speculation on my part, but it's just an interesting aspect that I saw when I was reading this. She said she had a long wait. So she was articulate. She had a distinctive voice. She paid for the ride and tipped me $5. She then sat with another taxi driver in his car waiting for the train because I had to pick up other customers. I saw her on TV where she was identified as Shannon Gilbert. I am certain that the girl was Shannon Gilbert. I recognize her unusual eye droop and her voice. Her story she told me of her family matched the family of Shannon Gilbert. Rex Heuremann appeared to me to be a very big man I saw coming from the motel room I mentioned in my affidavit. I recognize Shannon Gilbert. I told my dispatcher of this incident. I also told the female manager at the Sayville Motor Lodge of the incident. The manager appeared to be a native of India. I told other taxi drivers of this incident. The dispatcher told the telephone number of the lodge. The dispatcher had the telephone number of the lodge man. Now, talk about a huge investigative clue, right? So this is something now I wonder if they had this back in the day, could they have identified Rex even further? Now, does the Sayville Motor Lodge still have those records? I don't know, but I thought that was a real interesting part. Uh, she said, I called the police. This is where I get aggravated. I called the police tip line when Rex was arrested. I spoke with a young woman and told her the basic facts, which I knew. I spoke twice to the tip line that day. I never received a return call. That makes me nuts, right? So you had this information and you did nothing with it. And that's the Crime Stoppers is a great program. Yeah, so here I am not deepaying. How the hell did this case take so long to be solved when there were so many witnesses? Yeah, and not only so many witnesses, but phone calls, phone numbers. I mean, dispatch records. You name it. They could have had. Yeah, Andrea. Ugh, we could probably think of some better adjectives to use. Okay, Candace, great question. Is the tip line information logged anywhere? The answer to that question should be yes. The way Crime Stoppers works, for those of you that might not know, it is a total anonymous uh, tip line. They don't record the phone messages. There's no caller ID. There's no information on anything. So because I worked in Crime Stoppers for a little bit right before I retired. The way it's supposed to work is that somebody calls in a tip. If the tip sounds credible, the investigator or detective or police officer, whoever it is, who answers the phone is supposed to log the information down in the book. And they are supposed to tell the person, call back in a few days. Because if that tip leads to something, that person could be eligible for the reward. Now, believe it or not, many people say, I don't care about the reward. I just want you to catch this guy, or I just want you to do, whatever. Most of the people do that. They don't want to be bothered. So yes, they're supposed to keep track of every one of these things, because if there's got to be a payout, they're going to have. Now you say, well, how do they know this? How do you know who you're paying out? Here's what you're supposed to do. When that person calls back, they say, I called on such and such a date. I gave this tip. I spoke to this officer or detective. They are supposed to get a code number, and it's a random code number that's issued every time. And that code number is supposed to be recorded in the book. So they could call up and say, I'm code number 1234. And that's how you know if you're dealing with the right person. Because once that happens, they put the transactions together. And if the case then goes to an arrest, the person's entitled to money. Now, I know it sounds a little convoluted, but it really isn't. It's pretty simple and it works pretty well. So, Candace, I'm sorry I had to go that long way around to answer that question, but I couldn't do it without explaining how the Crime Stoppers thing works. So, wow, 100 people watching. That's unbelievable. That must be a new record. So thank you guys for all coming out. So great talk. Yeah, thanks, Raul. Yeah, so the Crime Stopper information is really important, because I'd like to know now if there were other problems that Suffolk County refused to do. So remember, when she talks about Shannon Gilbert, we're talking about in 2010. They had this information before this case even broke. So I can't. After a while, holy Mylanta, yeah, so many people dropped the ball on this. I'll tell you. I know that's Jay's holy Mylanta. Yeah, I got to come up with a couple of my own things, but unfortunately, I bite my tongue every 2 seconds because I curse too much. So yeah, so great, Kimberly. I'm glad you figured that out. So the tip. Wonder if RK took the tip. RK meaning the RW. You mean? I don't know. Jeffrey Epstein level. Yeah. Well, I don't know about Jeffrey Epstein level, but I can tell you, Gemma, this thing is like every time I hear one of these things. Like I said, if I had hair, I'd pull it out, because this annoys me. From the police perspective, like I was a sergeant for almost 3/4 of my career, and I was responsible for making sure that stuff like this doesn't happen. And when I see stuff like this happen that could have prevented something, think about the consequences of what transpired in this investigation. Just think about how many red flags there were. The place looks like China. There's so many red flags, and the fact that you say to yourself like, oh my God, what happened here? You just, oh my God. So yeah, it aggravates me, and to no end. Thank goodness, Joe. I was worried you weren't normal. Yeah, I'm. I don't know what to tell you. So let's talk about the first section now. So let's get back to this cab driver. So remember now, we did the first story. Now we're going to back to page one. She said, in 2009, I was a taxi driver in Suffolk County, New York. I was employed as a taxi driver by Colonial. So if you want to look up the Colonial taxi service, if you're doing any research on this case and other companies at the time. I believe my employer was located in Sayville, New York. My employer's dispatcher directed me at the time to drive to a little road off of Ocean Avenue in Ronkonkoma to pick up a customer. The place was a bar not far from exit 59, Long Island Expressway. Now, just in case you guys are wondering, because I know eventually someone's going to bring up the Manorville cases. Like, how far is Sayville from Manorville? Now, Manorville, remember, is Valerie Mack and Jessica Taylor, where their torsos were found in Manorville and the rest of their remains were found in Gilgo. It's pretty far from Sayville to Manorville. It's about 20 something miles, right? It's about 25 miles, I guess, right off the top of my head. I don't know, 23 miles. If Jay's here, maybe he has a better idea because he lives further out in Suffolk. But let's put it this way, it's more than 20 miles. But here's the interesting part of this, right? So those women, Jessica Taylor and Valerie Mack, their remains were found in a wooded area known to be used by hunters. So just remember that as I go forward in this affidavit. She says, when I was at the bar, I observed an extraordinary large man wearing an army-like fatigue jacket, crouching down on a very small street next to the bar where I had pulled up. He rose so that I observed his immense size. He approached my cab. He appeared to be wearing jeans and a white t-shirt. His hair was moved, more or less light colored, but not blonde. He was a white man. I had been told by dispatcher that the place of destination for this customer, but I no longer recall the location. This large man approached my taxi to enter. His words to me seemed arrogant. He entered into the rear of my taxi. He sat in the rear seat, on the edge of the seat, in the middle of it, and said me these words to the effect, "We're going for a long ride in the woods," and indicated that we would pick up a girl who was in the house across the street from the bar. My taxi was stopped very close to the house on a very narrow side street. I could see a white girl in the window in that house. I believe that window in the house where I saw the girl was open. So there's the woods comment, right? So we weren't far enough, but still, it's like, yeah. So this woman here, I mean, talk about not one time, but two times. But this could be like this phone call here could have been a setup for her because she saw him already and she saw him with Shannon Gilbert. And I think that kind of freaked him out that someone had saw him and might be able to recognize him. And I think that's where this whole thing plays into it. And I think as far as finding a potential witness in this case, this one is a very good one to find because I guess it's not only once, but twice she had a run in with this guy. She said, I told the large man I could not take him on that trip that he had indicated. They had to clear it with my dispatcher. He argued with us. He argued with me, excuse me. He said words to the effect that you are being a smartass. As we argued, he said he wanted to kill me. I would just give him a reason to do so. He insisted he wanted to kill me. I heard him click a gun. While this occurred, I could hear my dispatcher yelling words to the effect, you got a gun on my driver. I see you. I got to call in to somebody. I said the words to that effect. I don't even know you. The large man had a sort of identification chain hanging on him, but I could not see the full ID. I asked him if he was a cop. He said he was a cop. When I asked him where he was a cop, he replied, Brooklyn. Now, this is not totally clear what they said in the press conference, but from what this affidavit reads, and correct me if I'm wrong, this large man believed to be Rex Heuremann is telling her that he is a cop. Right? Are you guys in agreement with that? The large man had a sort of identification chain hanging on him, but I could not see the full ID. I asked him if he was a cop. He said he was a cop. From where? He says Brooklyn. Now, Did anybody catch anything there? So Rex knows a cop from Brooklyn, correct? Remember, from the Swinger case. Just when I was reading these, I was trying to put pieces of this puzzle together that didn't come through in the press conference. And when I read that, to me, that jumped off the page, right? So he's saying he's a cop from Brooklyn. We know that RW is a cop from Brooklyn, right? Prospect Park. So does it mean anything? No, but I felt it was kind of interesting. I told the large man to just get out of my car, and I would not press charges. Then the man who I subsequently took to be the girl's boyfriend has told me later on by the dispatcher who pulled into the house driveway. I turned off the car. I said that I was not moving and I was not driving from the spot. I told him that he would have the keys, take the car, he could take my money. I asked him, would he speak to his mother that way? He replied with intense anger with, "My mother is dead." My dispatcher said to him, "Just walk away." The large man stepped out of the car. He leaned into the front passenger window. The dispatcher told me, that the large man asked the boyfriend and girl for a ride, to which one of them replied with the words to the effect, "No, the cops are on their way." The large man went into a nearby wooded area and shot the gun off 2 times, according to the dispatcher. I had already started the car, and I had already driven down the street when the large man did whatever the dispatcher told me that he did. All right, so she got the hell out of there, and I don't blame her. She says, I drove down the street, a Suffolk County police car and a white and blue car was coming down with no lights on and no siren. The officer had dark hair, appeared to be in his 30s of age. I told the police officer that the large man had pulled a gun. The officer told me that he was responding to the call, and the dispatcher had said to him that the girl had also called it in. I said to him in the words of the effect, "He's one of yours. He had a bad night. He pulled a gun." The officer vehicle then crept down the street past my car. So there is the first instance. That's the second instance that this taxi cab driver had with Rex. So it was Rex who said he was a police officer. That didn't come out in the press conference that way. And she was so convinced that she told the Suffolk County cop that this guy is one of yours. He's a cop. So Missy Mayhem. Yeah, that presser was the iconic, the fashion, the partnership, and through you. Yeah, it was a message. Like I said, the hat and I like the pink tie with the polka dots. That was my favorite. Gemma, was he a cop in Brooklyn before? Yes, he was a police officer in the 7-5 precinct in East New York, really far from Prospect Park. But he was a cop, I believe, in 1988, and I believe by the time this incident happens, he's already a cop in Suffolk County. I think he gets to Suffolk County in 1994. I think he spends like 5 or 6 years in New York City before he ends up there. So that's something, right? Yeah, she's like, I'm at my daughter's house watching the kids right now with this up into my ear. Like, what? Yeah, this story kind of takes some twists and turns. But when you start breaking this down and you start looking at some of the clues and some of the things in there that I wish they were able to actually expand upon more. Now, you know as well as I do, this is only what they want you to know. Now, these affidavits were signed. This one was signed, the one with the cab driver was just signed on September 20th, 2023. And this one for the swinger was signed August 31st, 2023. Now, here's the problem. And John Ray mentioned this today. He's been trying to get the Suffolk County Police to take these statements for years. They just got done now. Right? They just got done now. And if you think about the task that the Commissioner Rodney Harrison has had to undergo in regards to this case, considering how fast they moved on this, I said it gets worse and worse for the Suffolk County Police Department. Back when this thing first broke, and a lot of people also blame James Burke from the beginning. Burke wasn't in charge for the first year of this whole thing going on. He comes in after this case had already kicked off. I mean, but then he royally screws up everything else. But this was being handled by a different commissioner, Richard Dormer, at the time. Still with Thomas Spoda, the district attorney, if you guys don't know, that they had a public dispute. The police commissioner and the district attorney had a public dispute on how many killers were involved in this case. Richard Dormer, the police commissioner, said that there was one killer. The district attorney said there were multiple killers. Well, Richard Dormer unfortunately passed away. He was forced to retire. He passed away a few years ago because it would have been great to be able to talk to him now, knowing what we know about this case. He was replaced pretty quickly back then, and I just some would say that Burke was brought in intentionally. Well, James Burke is for another stream because my God, we could probably, if you missed that interview I had with Gus Garcia Roberts, you should check that out. That was a couple of weeks ago, and it was all James Burke related. And even the John Ray one I did there, he gets in there. So Gemma, yes, Gritty. Dormer had his Irish accent. Yeah, he had the Irish brogue, and he actually did an interview with a former sergeant that I used to work with, and it was on YouTube, but I haven't been able to find it again. But he did an interview, a sit-down interview with this sergeant for like a podcast kind of thing before podcasting was even in vogue. And I was looking for that there because it was actually kind of interesting in that. And that's the so yeah, Viv. I'm beginning to think it was a killer ring. Well, one of the theories that has developed over the years that this is a cabal of men that have been together doing this. Uh, it's kind of interesting because when you take a look at now, the pieces and the puzzles are starting to, maybe fall into place. So there might be something to that, Viv. Cece, yeah, the Gus Coletti interview. Yeah, that one. That was he was one of the witnesses to her that night. But here's the thing now. As we are getting further into this investigation, we're learning that some of these people are connected. So when what Viv was saying about, there's a whole group of people, it's interesting. Now, John Ray had made a mention on my show about he had mentioned Peter Hackett, that he ran a survival uh, camp kind of thing, and that Rex was into survival stuff. He said that he didn't know for sure, but there could have been a connection there. But he dropped another bomb today. I don't know if you caught it or not, but he deposed Joseph Brewer today. He said he did it today, like hours before. Did you guys catch that? Joseph Brewer, I had mentioned him earlier. He was the John that hired Shannon Gilbert the night she disappeared. And it's wow, 100 people are watching. That's amazing. That is definitely a record for me. Thanks, Shannon, for bringing that out. Is this thing even working on Kick? I don't even know, but that's 100. That is a record for me. So I don't know. I'm like flabbergasted that you guys would come here and even want to hear me listen to me talk about this. We need a who's who chart. Yeah, Candace, I swear to God. So for those of you that don't know who Joe Brewer and Peter Hackett are, you should just write their names down. Peter Hackett, Hackett, and Joseph Brewer. Joseph Brewer, I said, hired Shannon Gilbert the night she disappeared in that May of 2010. And Peter Hackett, remember, was the doctor who had reached out to Shannon's mother saying that he was taking care of her and that he was running like a wayward house for girls, if you recall. So that's those two characters. They had since moved from Oak Beach. I think they moved to Florida or something. But when I heard that he deposed Joseph Brewer today, my mouth dropped, my jaw dropped, because it's just something. Brooklyn, Bronx, Queens, Staten Island, Manhattan. Joe, we need you every week. Yeah, that'd be great. I went, well, I'm trying, right? So we're getting this thing, we're gearing this thing up, and Shannon's gonna make us a who's who chart. Yeah, that'd be great. And I can help you with that and plug in some of the pieces there, Shannon. So let me know when you're ready, and we can put this thing together. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of characters that are involved in this, and there's a couple of big people when I mean big, I'm talking about politics. We know that, of course, James Burke, the police chief, went to federal prison. We know that the district attorney went to federal prison. But to me, there's always some sort of underlying thing out there that just keeps on, you know, stopping this case from moving forward. It always seems to be some force, right? That seems to be. So, like, just take for instance, with the Ray Tierney statement that comes out, right? These guys are supposed to be all playing on the same thing, right? We had this big unity kind of meeting, and we said this is what we're doing, and now all of a sudden, it sounds like we're going to be doing some infighting, which is kind of sad. And the other thing that a lot of people don't realize is that the now county executive Steve Ballone is being forced to retire at the end of this year. And they're going to hold an election for the next executive. And generally, that executive chooses a new police commissioner, which to me would be absolutely devastating to this case. Absolutely devastating. I don't know if you guys agree with me, but replacing Rodney Harrison now, and I'm going to talk to him about, I'm going to ask him about this coming up on Tuesday. I think it would actually set this case back greatly. And I don't know if it's a good idea. And I hope that the next executive that comes in, whoever he or she may be, I don't care if they're a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, a frog, whatever, you got to keep Rodney on this case until it's done. I tell you, whoever it is, it's going to be an unpopular political move to say that he or she is going to replace this police commissioner. This guy came in and said he was going to solve this case on day one, and everybody laughed at him. Well, here we are, right? We're into this case now 2 years or so, and look how far we've gotten. We have an arrest. We've had 3 charges already for murder out of the 11 bodies. We might have that 4th. Did anybody catch that too? There was another little thing in there. I can't be the only one that caught this. When the commissioner started talking, he mentioned about the Gilgo 4th, about the 4th case, Maureen Brainerd Barnes. And to me, it's kind of like they kind of got her already now. And this that they haven't filed the charges yet. I don't know about you, but I don't know. Did anybody else catch that? I think the DNA's come back. I just could if you have time, right? I know everybody's got things to do, but if you have the time, rewatch the press conference when Commissioner Harrison speaks. So just you could scrub right to the end because remember he only talks the last like 5 or 6 minutes of that, and I'm going to ask him this on Tuesday. And I'm definitely going to ask him about this on Tuesday because he kind of I think he almost slipped that the DNA has come back in the Maureen Brainerd Bard case. I just, yeah, Candace, reading between the lines, I just think I just picked that up. But I was looking, when I see people specifically, when they're talking at these press conferences, not only do you have to listen to every word that they say, but you have to watch their body language because it kind of foretells certain things that are pretty important. So if you missed that, go back and then, leave me a comment later on or send me a tweet, whatever. Tell me what you think. Say, Joe, no, I don't think so. But I think the 4th charge is coming real soon. And I also think that he didn't say anything, but I think Peach's identification will be coming out soon also. This has been going on since October of 2021. I can't imagine that they haven't identified her yet. And remember, her child too. Her child was found in Gilgo. With some of her remains, and also she was found in Hempstead Lake State Park, for those that might not know. If you're looking for a source on who are all these people, Catch LISK, if he's still in the room, you got to go to Catch LISK. Go to his Twitter feed, catch_LISK. Raul's got the ultimate thing on this Long Island serial killer, all the different. I have a map on this too, but nothing like Raul's done. So he's the guy to talk to about all these people and who's involved in what. So Raul, if you're still here, if not, guys, look him up. Or just shoot me an email. And there he is. Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, don't even bother going anywhere else. Just go to Raul, and he will. He'll show you exactly what he's got. All these people, and there are so many missing persons, and I mean not missing persons, but so many murder victims that could be involved in this case. Originally, when I heard a couple of weeks ago that they were adding 2 detectives to this case, I thought it was to go through some of those cases. But now it might appear that their focus is on Karen Vergata, right? Remember, they just identified her. She was just identified a couple of months ago. And it goes to show you how important it is to identify your victims in an unidentified victims killing case. Because once you get their photos out, once you get their pictures and their family comes forward, you get people like this where they look at this TV and they go, oh my God, I remember that person. And unfortunately, some of the human remains they had were skeletal remains. So once they can identify those skeletons and put a face on it through a driver's license photo or a yearbook picture, there might be somebody else coming forward. And it's been my theory from the beginning that the killer who had killed Peaches, Valerie Mack, Jessica Taylor had cut them up for a reason, and the reason was that he had picked them off the street. Right? For those of you that saw me on Nancy Grace or here get yelled at for using the term streetwalkers, I was trying to express my thought that that these women were picked up while walking on the street as sex workers, and somebody could have seen them, and which kind of validates what happened with this driver. I think that he, meaning Rex, if this is Rex, knew that this is the driver that saw him, and he was going to try to get rid of her because he saw who he was and he could identify him. And it's just something. So, well, thanks, Mandy. I didn't do a great job like Bob Motter in Defense Diary does, right? When I told him next time we're going to get him a robe, a fireplace behind him, and a pipe, and he could read us the affidavits, because I could listen to that guy read affidavits all day long. And my accent, he's got a little bit of a Chicago accent, but my accent might be a little bit strong for certain people. It was funny because at the cold case symposium, I went on. They were people in Indiana, like after hearing me talk, they were like, "Oh my God." And then the lady Lauren from Australia came on with her accident. They were they were looking for subtitles from what we were talking. But anyway, so I digress. But this is going to really take off. I have a feeling. And if my thought is right that the commissioner only has a couple of months left, I think we're going to see a real push to he's going to try to get a real push to try to get this case, as many of these cases tied up as he can. And I think that might be the reason, or one of the impetus behind having this press conference today, because that this might be his reality. So I am going to I'll try to ask him that gently, right? Because I don't want to offend him. He's doing me a favor for sure. But I think it's a real possibility. So I'm just going to wrap it up. You guys, it's been an hour already. I can't believe I've been gassing at you guys for an hour. But listen, I know when people say this, people say, oh, you're just saying that, whatever. I really appreciate so many people. I can't name them all. I mean, but whether it's Kick or on YouTube here, you guys have been really nice to me. It's been great. It's been fun doing this. And I kind of steered away from doing some TV stuff, especially today, because it's like I say, it's me time now. I've done TV shows, hundreds of TV shows, which also reminds me that I filmed 3 shows that are coming out. I think either this Friday or they come out on Hulu next week. And one of my cases from Cold Case is going to be on the New York homicide on Oxygen. I got a funny story to tell you about that. But that detective who's running that case, Wendell Stratford, he's coming on my show. Here's a detective who made 300. He's closed 300 homicides. So I'm going to have Wendell on our show, and I'm going to let him tell you that funny story about that case. All right. So I'm going to sign off now. I want to thank you guys, and you guys have a great night, and we'll see you soon. Right. So Saturday, I have another show. Hopefully we'll see you then. You guys have a great night.